Good evening, everybody. Welcome, and thanks for joining us to our Penn Civics with Lead PA University. This is part of Lead PA Institute, pardon me's effort to deepen our understanding of how power and policy work at every level. You are being hosted tonight by Jews of a Secular Democracy through our work with the Jewish Women and Religious Freedom Project, which is part of the which is underwritten by the Jewish Women's Foundation of Greater Pittsburgh, underwritten in part by trustee Nancy Wiseman in memory of her beloved mother-in-law, trustee Jackie Weschler. Tonight, we plan on guiding you from the most local elected offices all the way up to some statewide roles that shape our daily lives. Tonight's conversation isn't just about who holds these positions, it's about why it matters and why it matters that we understand them, engage with them, and see ourselves as potential leaders within them. For Jewish people, both those who practice the faith and those who live its cultural values, civic engagement has always been a cornerstone of our collective story. Our history reminds us what happens when decisions are made about us without us. From school boards and borough councils to judicial benches, the state legislature, these roles determine what books our children read, how our communities are funded, and how justice is administered. Women, in particular, bring essential voices to these spaces, voices shaped by care, resilience, and a deep understanding of the communities we live in. Yet women remain underrepresented in almost every level of government in Pennsylvania. If we want policies that reflect the diversity of our lives and our values, we need women, Jewish women included, not just voting and volunteering, but leading. And finally, as people who understand the profound importance of protecting the separation of church and state, we have a responsibility to step forward. Democracy thrives when government represents everyone, not just those whose faith or worldviews aligns with the current majority. So tonight, as we walk through Pennsylvania's civic structure, I encourage you to think not only about what these offices do, but who you want to see sitting in them, and whether that person might just be you. I am so pleased to introduce my friends from Lead PA Institute and our partners for tonight, Dr. Kai Smith Morris. Dr. Kai is a credentialed practitioner that has spent 22 years in adult education arenas as a professor of human resources, executive management, and urban economics. As Lead PA and Lead PA Institute's joint executive partner, training director, and chief financial officer, Dr. Kai is responsible for creating and implementing nonpartisan leadership and development programs to address structural and racial inequities within Pennsylvania's nonprofit advocacy organizations, civic agencies, and electoral landscape. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Kai. And also welcome Gina Amorosa Lata. No, did I do it? Yes. Whew. Okay. Gina is the Director of Programs for Lead PA and Lead PA Institute. Prior to joining Lead, she previously served as the Executive Director of the Delaware County Democratic Party during the pivotal 2020 and 2021 elections. Her experience on campaigns includes roles such as field organizer, political director, fundraising director, and campaign manager, as well as fundraising and compliance consultant for multiple organizations and campaigns. She is passionate about her odd year elections, me too, girl, growing the candidate and staff pipeline, and sharing political know how to help demystify the electoral process. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wealth of knowledge between both of you with all of us tonight. Take it away.
Allison, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And thank you for inviting us to be part of this really historic event this evening. I don't know if you've done this before. If you have, thank you for welcoming us into something that has existed and that was not necessarily open to other people before. If you've not done it before, thank you for welcoming us into this space and figuring out how we can collaborate and work together. Please forgive my voice for everyone who is listening. I don't know what is happening right now. I feel like might be trying to get sick, but I'm not quite sick. I can't really afford to get sick. We have 7 days left to an election. So working hard to just keep it moving. And after the election is over, I will lay down and sleep, and hopefully my voice will return. My name is Dr. Kai Smith Morris. For those who have not met me through Lead PA or Lead PA Institute before, I am one of two executive directors here at Lead PA and Lead PA Institute. We work in 56 out of 67 counties. So you may think that we are a huge conglomerate. We are not. We are a team that is small and mighty. This is the four of us here that you see pictured on your screen. My counterpart, Oliver Trong, is the Executive Outreach Director. Jenna Maravilla is our Manager of Communications. She does everything that you see outwardly facing. And Gina Amoroso Latta is running our programs, both on the recruitment and on the training side. So I am blessed to work with this incredible team of people. And we come from a place of yes at all times. You ask us to show up, we will figure out how to show up, and we will figure out how to tailor our curriculum to your specific needs. I do have a very brief disclaimer that I have to give because our lawyers require us to say the thing. And so the thing is that Lead PA and Lead PA Institute are nonpartisan organizations. So everything that we present will be from a nonpartisan perspective. We do collaborate with organizations across the Commonwealth who may present their content and their opinions from a partisan perspective. We will not ever in any way censor people's comments, okay? Because we do believe in anti-oppression. We do believe in the firm separation of church and state. We do believe in representation. We do believe that women make everything better and our communities thrive when women are elected. So it is an honor and a privilege to be here. And I am not going to say a whole lot tonight because this is what I sound like, but I am handing it over to Gina. She is my other hand. I won't say right or left because it really doesn't matter. She is the other hand where I can't reach, she can. And I'll just be here hanging out in the background while Gina goes through the content of our curriculum. But for those who have not spent time with us before, this hopefully is an introduction, and we'll invite you to spend time with us again. We will invite you to consider running for office because it has always been you, and it is your turn. So anyone who tells you it's not your turn, sit down and wait. It is your turn, and that time is now. And if you felt like there's some elite class of electable individuals who should be running our government, it's always been you. You are that elite class. That's all I have to say for this evening. And I'm going to hand it over to Gina Amoroso Latta. Thank you so much, Gina, for taking control this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Kai. I hope you feel better. Sending all my love. Hi, everyone. My name is Gina Amoroso Latta, as you have heard, and some of you even joined beforehand and heard my tales of my year. So it's so nice to be here with all of you. I am super excited. As I mentioned, as Allison mentioned in my intro, I'm super passionate about elections, but especially odd year elections. And in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is super important for a bunch of reasons, and we're going to get into it all tonight. But we're going to start with some quick trivia. I have some questions. Throw what you think the answer is in the chat. And that's how we're going to get ourselves a little warmed up for this evening. Okay. This is a little bit of a maybe softball for some folks, but how often are elections held in Pennsylvania? And you can just throw your answer right in the chat. Two times per year. Yes. So in Pennsylvania, we have elections twice a year. The great news is that they're almost always 6 months apart. They're almost always in May, and they are always in November. The only exception is our presidential year elections. We move our election up to April. Sometimes they might try to move it even more into the new year. But we vote every 6 months in this state. It makes it very easy. Every May, every November, except presidential years, we do April. All right. Here's another one. What state spends 10 times more on their citizens than Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania is a state, we are the sixth populous state in this country. We have 13 million people. I found this out today, actually, while I was, or last week while I was putting these slides together. Does anybody want to take a guess as to what state spends 10 times more on their citizens than Pennsylvania? Karen, great guess. Texas. Anybody else want to throw a state in? California. Other great answer. I'll wait for, let me see if I can get one different one from Texas and California. New York. The answer is, oh, Sarah, you were getting closer than everybody else. The answer is Alaska. Alaska spends 10 times more on their citizens than Pennsylvania. For context, there are not 750,000 people who live in Alaska. There is 741,000 and some change. I know. I found that out when I was putting this together and I was like, this is very important. Now, I did see that there are some folks from not from Pennsylvania. So you might not even know what this is. And I'm so happy you're here to learn what it is. How many first-class cities are there in Pennsylvania? And some might say, I don't even know what a first-class city is. And I can't wait to tell you what it is. 2, okay. Anybody else want to take a guess? 3. So actually the answer is 1. It is Philadelphia. A first-class city in Pennsylvania is considered a city that has more than a million people, excuse me. Pittsburgh is considered a second-class city because it's between 250 and a little less than a million. And then there's third class and so on and so forth. What this means, and a lot of people, especially when we're talking about elections, will be interested in why sometimes Philadelphia has all of these separate rules, and sometimes people consider them privileges, other times people do not. And it is because of this, by our charter of our Commonwealth, this is what it is. They are considered both a city and a county. They are afforded certain rights because of that. Which actually, before I even sit to our next slide, Pennsylvania is a Commonwealth state. And that almost means absolutely nothing, right? There's no legal standing that changes things. We aren't more special than another state. There's 4 states that are Commonwealths. But what it does mean, and you'll see this as we start diving into some of this content, is all of our counties basically get to operate their own governments by their choice. So what do I mean by that? Is that every county, based on either their home rule charter or whatever other governing institute they have, can make their government kind of look like whatever they want. I want you to keep that in mind as I move through this, because that's going to start coming up when we start talking about the makeup of our government and what it looks like for all of us. So let's just do a quick review of Pennsylvania voting cycles, right? Again, May primary with the exception of presidential years. Pennsylvania is a closed party state, which means in our primaries, we can only vote partisanly. You can only walk in and vote either Democrat or Republican. And if you are an independent or unaffiliated, unfortunately, you have no primary to vote in, because we only create ballots for the top 2 parties in the state, which are the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. There are other means by getting on the ballot if you are an independent, but you don't vote in those primaries. All of our generals, that is bipartisan, right? You can walk right in, you can choose who you're going to be voting for, Democrat, Republican, independent. There's somebody here in Delaware County who, 2015, ran for the Happy Birthday Party. I'm not kidding. I want to say it was Folsom, but I could be wrong. So that is where the ballot is open to everybody, unaffiliated, you can run. In our even years, that is when we focus mostly on our state ledge U.S. Elections. There'll be statewide every 4 years, intercepting between those. In our even years, when there's no presidential election, that is when we will elect our governor and our lieutenant governor. In a presidential even year, that is when we will elect our statewide row offices. And I'll get into a little bit of what those row offices look like. In our odd years, those are your local, municipal, county, judicial races. That is your school board all the way up until our statewide judicial branches. Our judicial branches are up every 4 years or every 2 years, and every odd year, there's usually a statewide judicial race. Again, we'll be getting a little bit into that. And then every 4 years is the statewide statewide elections, right? We have our governor, we have presidential, and then in the odd years, we have our statewide judges. The reason I bring this up, everybody talks about even years. We talk about the midterms, we talk about the presidential. This is not to say those are not incredibly important races. This is everything you vote for in an even year, right? You vote for our state legislator, you vote for Congress, you vote for statewide offices, right? Every 2 years, you are voting for your state representative. Every 4 years, you're voting for your state senator. Every 2 years, you're voting for your House of Representative, U.S. Congress. And depending on when the cycle is happening, roughly every potentially anywhere between 2 and 6 years, you're voting for a US senator. You're also voting again in even years, either for your governor, lieutenant governor, or for our other statewide row offices. But look at everything you can be and will be voting for in your odd years. You are voting for everything from who's representing you at school board, who is representing you in your municipality, whether you live in a borough, whether you live in a township, the folks who are in charge of legislating, of being a financial watchdog, of being your tax collector, of being your constable. In fact, there's actually a couple of, this is a non-exhaustive list. I actually forgot some folks. You're voting for your judges, your magistrate judges, your court of common pleas judges, again, your statewide judges. You are voting for potentially, again, where you live, your mayor, tons of row offices, your district attorney. So it's not to say that one year is more important than the other, but it is to say a lot of people neglect odd years. In fact, we call them odd years explicitly because many people will call them off-year elections because it almost makes it sound like it's not important, which is why we call them odd years. These elected officials, and you will see, directly influence your day-to-day, and to be totally frank, they can work way faster and impact you way sooner than almost anything that's happening in DC or in Harrisburg. And we're going to get a little bit into that. But first, just a little bit of a review, our state government. This is some stuff that we're going to be talking about in 2026 and in 2028. State government, we have our governor and our lieutenant governor, right? They're our chief executive and deputy executive to the state. We have our attorney general, our chief law enforcement officer, our auditor, and our treasurer. Our treasurer is our chief financial officer, and our auditor is the chief financial watchdog. All of these folks have incredibly important jobs. Currently, our governor, lieutenant governor is Governor Josh Shapiro and Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis. Our attorney general is David Sunday. Our auditor general, oh God, he just won. No, he won re-election. Tom DeFleur, and our treasurer is Stacey Garrity. So our governor and lieutenant governor are both Democrats, but the rest of our row offices are currently Republican electeds. Next year, we will vote for our governor and our lieutenant governor. We also, as I mentioned, in our state government have actually the largest full-time state legislator in the country. Our 253 representatives work what is considered full-time. If you look at their calendar, that does not mean, every day of the month or of the year, but more than any in the country, and we are the largest. Our state government, our state representatives and our state senators are in charge of creating law, establishing the state budget, and obviously representing our constituents. It's important to note right now in Pennsylvania, in case for our folks who are joining from out of state don't know this, we currently do not have a state budget. So while there is a government shutdown happening in DC, we also do not have a state budget. And that is impacting a lot of folks very, very quickly. Our schools are having to take out loans just so they can cover their operations and logistics. As we're talking about SNAP benefits ending, Josh Shapiro is trying to find ways in which we can go into our rainy day funds to help supply food banks, homeless shelters, etc. So again, your state government impacts you again just as much as our federal government. A lot of people pay attention to what's happening in DC because it's, you know, the thing we all know about, right? We all know about the president and US Congress, but what is happening in our own backyards is incredibly important. Our state representatives represent about 60,000 people per state, per House district, and our 50 state senators each represent about, I wrote this down because I always forget this number, about 250,000. As I mentioned, our state representatives are up every 2 years, but our state senators actually have 4 year terms. So in the even years when the governor is running, every state senate district that is an even number, so 2, 4, 6, they will be up for election. And every even year that there is a presidential election, that is when our odd year state senator districts are on the ballot. The reason I talk about, oh, actually, let's get into the judicial branch because this is super important. Not in our even years, but in our odd years is when we elect members to our state judicial branch. Our Commonwealth Court and our Superior Court are our 2 appellate courts. Our Commonwealth Court has 9 judges, our Superior Court has 11, and then of course we have our Supreme Court, which has 7. Right now, we have our judicial retention happening for our Supreme Court. Nobody is running for election this year. They are all running to be retained for another 10 years. Our Supreme Court does things like when it comes to elections, making sure that, you know, ballots are being counted. During COVID, a big thing that was happening was people were asking for extensions because there was mail delays, because people were struggling with the mail-in ballot process. So the Supreme Court ruled that at a certain date, they could extend, Bureau of Elections could extend the deadline. They have been leaders in protecting abortion access, all this kind of stuff. So we have to this November vote to either retain or not retain our judges. If we don't retain our judges, we will have an incomplete bench for the next 2 years. We also have folks running for Superior Court and Commonwealth Court. And I'm going to get into how do you find out who these people are, who I can vote for. So when we think about the state government, I highlight this for a lot of reasons. We have people who vote, and this is how it is broken down and who is represented. Obviously, our state ledge, our judicial branch, our row offices are going to have their own staffs underneath them. But the staff that will directly influence you immediately is who the governor and lieutenant governor can hire. Government department, offices of admin, budget, council, etc., and advisory boards and commissions, right? We're talking about who is the Secretary of Education, who is the Secretary of Health, right? A lot of people didn't know how important the Secretary of Health would be until COVID. And we all remember how Dr. Levine was treated. But it really becomes important who is our governor and who they are assigning to these roles. Helping with the admin and budget and council, and also advisory boards. Governor Josh Shapiro has a number of advisory boards addressing myriad of issues. He has AAPI, he has a women's commission, a Jewish commission. He has so many of these, and these are kind of just the folks who come together from across the state and say, here are the issues facing these communities in a variety of different parts of this state, because Pennsylvania is a huge state. We have some of the most suburban areas to some of the most rural. We have cities that have over 1 million people, and we have counties that don't even have 10,000 people. And so the boards and commissions come together to really be able to give advice to the governor, to be able to say, here are the real issues facing this kind of constituent across our Commonwealth. So again, as Allison and Dr. Kai were mentioning, there are so many ways for your voice to be heard. And as I get into this, advisory boards and commissions are one of those ways in which you can be a seat at the table talking about the issues that are important to your community and things happening in your backyard. So I wanted to highlight this. And it's also super important throughout this presentation to note who is elected and who is appointed, because it does make a difference. But now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. My favorite thing to talk about, odd year elections. Pennsylvania has 67 counties. As Dr. Kai mentioned, we work in about 50 of them. There are 2,560 different governments, little governments, that are all operating in Pennsylvania. That number, I want to mention, does not include the 500 school boards that also exist in Pennsylvania. Your local and county government, this list here is not exhaustive. These are all the ways that they immediately impact your life. Taxes, roads, when you go get a marriage license, when you need to do an extension on your house, how your emergency services are treated, how different departments exist. I live in Delaware County. For those of you who do not know, that is the fourth largest county. Yeah, the fourth largest county in Pennsylvania. We have over 500,000 people who live in my county. Until 2022, we did not have a health department. We were the largest county in the country, population-wise, that did not have one. So you can imagine what kind of a mess we were facing here in Delaware County without one. And it was because for generations upon generations of elected officials, they did not believe that it was worth a taxpayer dollar. They did not see the point in having a Department of Health. And so COVID came in and, like many communities, began to decimate our area, decimate our hospitals. And some of the long-term issues that we are facing is now Delaware County, again, a county of 500,000 people. We have 2 emergency rooms in our county because of how many hospitals and emergency rooms have had to close, either due to private equity, a lack of resources, or any other plethora of issues. Jails. This is another really big thing. Thanks to Dr. Kai, I'm aware of this. But in Dauphin County, in the last, Dr. Kai, please, if I get the number wrong, please let me know. But in the last 4 years, there's been 21 people who have died in the county jails out in Dauphin County. There's a whole podcast about it. And how, who, and when these deaths are being investigated comes down to who is your county government, who is your district attorney, who is actually doing these investigations, right? Your schools. Like this, we could talk about this slide forever. And the reason I bring this up is because immediately you can see a change in this starting as soon as December for your school boards, and as people are getting inaugurated in January in your municipalities and in your county government. So again, I wanted to kind of create this county-wide chart for everybody to think about. Now, again, one of the things that I need to make clear is because this is Pennsylvania and every county is its own special snowflake, there are going to be some differences county to county, and I'm going to highlight some of those, right? So every county is going to have their county judges, their court of common pleas, their magistrate. Every county is going to have some makeup of either a county commissioner, which is 3 in Pennsylvania, or a county council. And that can range from 5 to 11 in Pennsylvania. So in my county, I live in Delaware County, we have 5. Luzerne County has 11 members of their county council. We are also home rule chartered, which is why we are county council versus county commissioner. Row offices. Every county in Pennsylvania can decide which row offices are appointed and which row offices are elected. For instance, in Delaware County, we elect our district attorney, our county council, our treasurer, our register of wills, and our sheriff. That is it. In my neighboring county, Chester County, they elect 9 row officers, which include but are not limited to the prothonotary, the coroner, and there's another one that's really obscure that people don't know. So it is up to us, the voters, to really be able to look into who is representing me, how do they get there? Another big seat, and you can see it's both yellow background but brown writing, a county executive. In Allegheny County, they elect their county executive. In Erie County, they elect their county executive. But in a lot of counties, that is an appointed position. So depending on who your commissioners or county are, depending on the county you are in, not only are they appointing your solicitors and the heads of your advisory boards and commissions, they could be appointing the person who is basically running the whole county. So being aware of what's happening in your backyard, who is your county or county and how is it organized? And I'm going to show at the end of this, I'm going to teach you how you can look into this. So in Pennsylvania, You have cities, you have townships, you have boroughs. All of them have different makeups. So in a township, you do not have a mayor. You have a board of supervisors or commissioners. They appoint a township manager. There's advisory boards and commissions. There's solicitors, government departments. All of those are appointed. There's a board of auditors, which, as you can see, are both colors, because depending on the township you live in, they may be appointed or they may be elected. And most townships do have a tax collector that is elected. Again, it's really important as I'm going through these next 3 slides that I really just want to illustrate how many people you vote for, but how many people they directly affect by who they appoint. Again, borough organization. Boroughs are a little bit different than a city. They have a mayor, but that mayor doesn't carry as much weight as, say, a major city like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Scranton, etc. These bigger first class, second class cities. So again, you have your mayor, you have your borough council, your tax collector. Depending on your borough, you have an elected or appointed board of auditors. But again, here's all the people that the borough council, not the mayor, are going to appoint. I put an asterisk here because, again, with every county and kind of every local government being able to organize itself, the borough charter will let you know which roles will be appointed and which will be elected. And as you can see by Dr. Kai's comment, all the different kinds of borough offices, which is not even an exhaustive list, depending on your county, those are either going to be appointed positions or elected positions, which is why, especially in these odd years, which are also considered very, very low information elections, it is important for voters to kind of take the reins and go out and find who's on my ballot, what do these positions do, because I might think, oh, there's nothing on my ballot in 2025. And as represented, there's a lot going on. A city organizational chart. This is how a lot of folks kind of view cities and most government, right? Is you have your mayor, your city council, a controller, additional offices. But again, those offices can also range. In Philadelphia, they elect a sheriff and a register of wills, but they appoint a whole bunch of other positions, right? Knowing what your city manager is, advisory boards and commissions. Again, these next couple of slides are really to illustrate, while you might vote for some people, they are appointing a lot more. So it's super, again, who am I voting for? What are they standing for? What is their goals when they get into that office? How do they view how my government is supposed to function? Because they have a lot to say. And something I want to point out real fast, most of these roles, the county roles, the township roles, the borough roles, these elected positions are not full-time. The full-time positions are the appointed ones. So it really matters, again, how somebody views an elected official or a candidate views how government should function, because that is going to be what dictates to them the kind of folks they want to hire for the local government to make sure things are representing how they see government operating. So if you have somebody who believes in small government, they're going to shrink their government. They're going to make sure that we're saving taxes, but that might be taking away things from infrastructure and schools and emergency services. So just being aware again of how many people your vote is going to directly impact or influence, even if you're not the ones voting for them. And the last one, of course, is school boards. We are very passionate about school boards here for a lot of reasons. School boards since 2021 has been a hot topic for folks. The story I always tell is in 2017, I was a campaign manager for a school board slate, and sometimes I would knock doors and folks thought the school board and the PTA were the same thing. But school boards are doing everything from creating budgets, raising taxes, deciding how much teachers are being paid, deciding should we be banning books. And so you have a school board directors in your school board. They appoint the superintendent who appoints the chief officers. So again, the folks that you are electing have so much say over who is appointing and who is managing your government. It's important to just know who these people are. So how do you find out about who your elected officials are, right? I get asked this question all the time. And there are many different offerings, and I will send out these slides when I'm done, and all of these slides are hyperlinked for you to find these out. So on here, I have listed things like actual state websites. So I'm actually going to close out of this real fast. So you can find out more about your elected officials, right? So I'm going to click on the PA Ledge. So through the Department of State, they help you find your legislator, right? So you can go in here. You're all temporarily going to know where I live. You can search. Hopefully it doesn't take this long for everybody else. And here you go. Because of where I live, they can tell me all the way up to US Senate who is representing me in my area. Now, again, this is not a complete list, which is why we have to fill in the gaps with some of these other websites, right? Because it's not just who's in Harrisburg and in DC, it's also who is our school board, who is my township tax collector. And that's where League of Women Voters, Committee of 70, and honestly, your local county, municipal, and school board websites. Doing something like going to finding, what school district you live into, just Googling Wallingford Swarthmore School District, School Board. It should pop right up a list of names. You'll be able to cross-reference them. You'll be able to see what committees they sit on. You'll be able to do further research, go see when they were elected, when their term is up, going to your county government and doing the same thing, going to your municipal websites, just making sure that you're figuring out who these folks are, when they're up for election, what do they stand for, how are they immediately impacting your community. One of my favorite ways to find out what's on my ballot, right? You can go to your local county board of elections, you can go to the Department of State, but a really nifty website that I really wanted to share with you all, especially for my folks in Pennsylvania, is the Committee of 70 Voter Guide. This is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that does the deep dive into your area for you. And they give you an option to create a ballot so that you can then print it off and go to your polling location. So here's what I mean by that. I typed in my address, and here's who's on my ballot today in 2025. I have county council up. They're going to list the candidate and the party they belong to. And if somebody has filled out the information, they will give you all of their experience, their education. There is a questionnaire involved. So you can go through and you can kind of start of already getting an idea for some of these positions, what somebody thinks of these positions, right? Now, again, somebody needs to fill these all out, but a lot of folks do, so that you can get an understanding of who is running, what their background is, what their issues are. And so again, say I wanted to vote for Richard Womack, I'm adding him to my ballot. County sheriff, it gives you a breakdown of who, from what party. You can find their Facebook, you can find their LinkedIn. And again, you can go through and you can create your ballot. You can get familiar with these folks, what they stand for. You can find their websites, you can find their Facebooks, you can find their LinkedIns, and really get an understanding of what their values are so that you know who you are voting for. Because again, especially in odd years, I cannot emphasize this enough for who everybody is in the room and who will be watching later, how important odd year elections are, but how hard it can be to find information on them. So taking the time to do your homework and really find out who these people are. And the thing I really love about this website is this is a website that does get into the nitty gritty, right? Now you will see something here that says, because of ballot matching data is not available, this race may or may not be on your ballot. You'll see these little caution signs. That's because of where I live and the really, really tight township lines that they create. They can't really identify which ward I am in. I am in Ward 3. I already knew that. But you can go look up where you are registered to vote and you can say, oh, I'm in Ward 6. This is who I'm voting for. And so again, you can just see all of these races that are going to be on your ballot this year, all the way down to your school board. They list off who the party is. And again, if people fill out the information, you can get even more, but you at least are getting names and people that you can then start doing additional research on. And they go all the way up to statewide. They go all the way to retention, not just of your Supreme Court, but of also your common pleas, because you don't just elect your common pleas judges. You also do them every 10 years. And this website is a really good tool for you to be able to go in there and really find out who is running, who represents me, have they already been representing me, do I like what they are doing?
Gina, how do they
Yes.
handle bipartisan seats? Oh, I froze.
No, you're good. I actually heard that. As in like,
When they've cross-registered, like for school board
yeah.
or
So
judicial.
this here is the actual how they are actually registered, not just how they show up on ballots.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love this website. Is because to Allison's point, you have nonpartisan races, your school board and your judges, and you can cross file on those, meaning you can show up on both ballots as long as you get the correct petitions on there. So sometimes you can walk into your election thinking you're voting for a Democrat on that's listed as a Democrat, but they have cross ballot voted. So that's just important to know. So that's actually a great question, Allison. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to pause here for a second because I don't have many more slides, but I do want to see if there's any additional questions about finding this information out, the impacts on our community. You can throw something in the chat. So please feel free to throw any questions in there as we are going along. So one of the big things I wanted to kind of close this out before we got into any kind of Q&A section is how you can impact your community. And there are just simply so many ways, especially in a day and age in which feels hyperpolarized, sometimes very scary. There are so many ways that we can get involved. So voting in every election really does matter. To Allison's point, some of these races are nonpartisan, our school board and our judges. Who you vote for in a primary can really impact, right? It's pretty easy for somebody to cross ballot. And if you want to make sure that your party is represented correctly on the ballot, voting in the primary, voting for your school board candidates that you know are of your registered party for, school board and common pleas, super important. And obviously voting in every general election as well. Volunteering for your local state candidates and causes, whether that is knocking on doors, phone banking, postcarding, text banking. And there's also other ways in which people don't think about as volunteering, but I always take a time to say this. If you know somebody who is running for office, who's going to be opening up a political action committee or a candidate committee in order to fundraise, that person is going to need a treasurer. That is, I cannot emphasize enough, an incredible way to help a candidate almost immediately. Every candidate and every PAC needs a treasurer. I'm a treasurer for 2 candidates as it stands right now, but I've been have had up to 5 different treasurer candidates. I was like a compliance consultant, as mentioned in my bio. I had a portfolio as big as 18. Everybody needs a treasurer. And so if you are sitting around thinking, I want to do more than this, it feels like I can be doing more. You don't have a direct impact on, say, talking to voters, but you do have a direct impact on helping a candidate be able to fundraise to communicate to voters. We do a treasurer's training at Lead PA, so we will make sure that information gets sent out. If you are ever interested, you can reach out to me directly, but that is an incredible way to volunteer and help somebody. Beyond that, you can also just talk to your neighbors, right, about the importance of an odd year election. I had a conversation, I became the person, I moved into my neighborhood, and I live in a really diverse area, and people are really passionate. I saw a pair of signs last year, but as I've been going outside and enjoying the fall weather, walking my son, and people are saying hi, I'm always reminding them that there's an election this year. So many people do not think that there is an election this year because it's a low information year. It's an odd year. They have no idea who's running. They have no idea what's going on. So I just remind them the importance of, hey, our school board is up this year. Hey, our tax collector is up. Becoming a committee person for one of your parties, right? A Democratic or a Republican committee person. These folks work directly with the party. They endorse. So if you're really passionate about making sure the correct people are representing your party, they can have input on the rules that are dictating the party. They can hold, chairs accountable to making sure things are getting done right, correctly. Becoming a poll worker, I can guarantee you in your neighborhood, in your county, they need poll workers. After there was already a poll worker shortage in this state. Before COVID wrecked our poll worker, how many we had. You get paid for it, you do it twice a year. It is directly impactful to make sure that there are safe elections happening and that they are free and fair for all. It's a great way to get involved. It is a great way to support folks. So if you're ever interested, I would reach out to your county. You do have to some years run to be a poll worker, but oftentimes there are so many openings that you can then start getting appointed. Yes, exactly. 175 days in Allegheny County for a day in Allegheny County. I think it's the same in Delaware County. You can review, I will get to that question afterwards. So it's just a great way to impact your community immediately. Obviously, donating to a candidate running for election. I know that in even years, you are getting bombarded by every kind of text message in the world from people you did not know. Like, why is Mark Kelly in Arizona sending me a text message right now? However, in 2027, there's going to be a school board director in your area that if you have the capacity to literally give $50 or $75 to, would make a huge impact on their race. Where Mark Kelly asking for $75 is like not going to make a huge impact. It really will make a huge impact on these local races. As Dr. Kai said, running for office, you are ready. Like, I cannot emphasize enough, when you start doing research into who is representing you, you are going to be floored. I always make this joke on almost every training, so I apologize to Dr. Kai and Allison who have heard me say this 800 times. Everybody thinks that government operates like the show The West Wing, and I promise you it is more like Parks and Recreation. I am telling you, you are probably overqualified to run for office. There is going to be an office in your area that needs you. Run. Whether it's for school board, tax collector, county council, I promise you there is a seat at that table. There is not enough qualified people running for office. And the last thing I actually thought about this very last minute is all those commissions and boards I talked about at your county level or your state level, apply for them. They are so impactful in your community. I sit on the Delaware County Domestic Violence Task Force as a previous social worker and somebody who worked at the local domestic violence shelter, as well as having this like intersect with politics. And we've been doing incredible work helping to educate and support police officers who then are going to these 911 calls for a domestic dispute and really being able to support the victim or really being able to help assess the situation. We've gotten to, I want to say, over half of the police forces here. We've been able to fund these trainings, and we're seeing direct impacts. More and more of our domestic violence shelter and our rape crisis center are getting more and more direct calls for assistance. We're having less issues with domestic violence victims saying they're not feeling supported when they call 911. And that task force was only started 3 years ago, and we've already been able to train half of the police forces here, and we're making their direct impact. Your voice can be heard in so many different ways. I really just wanted to kind of highlight this as I'm closing out before I go to questions. And I did notice that we had a question already in the chat. So I'm going to go to the question. How can you review cross-balloting and how to best identify your candidate of choice with minimal info on that candidate. Okay. One of the big ways about cross-balloting is actually going to your local, municipal, or county party, whichever party you belong to, and asking to see an endorsed slate. Like, who are the endorsed slates? Because those people are actually endorsing along party lines, even though these are quote unquote nonpartisan slates. If you can't go there and you can't really find out from like the internet, you can always go find information through the Department of State website, which I can send you how you can find all of that in the follow-up email I'll send to Allison. But that is like the best way that you can find it, is actually going straight to your local parties, because they will usually on their websites, or if you ask them, will tell you these are the actual endorsed candidates. Again, being aware that some folks who are on this call might live in counties where there might be only one county party, like only represented. Even going to that website and seeing who is endorsed can also help you make an informed decision on who or whether you want to vote for. Are there any other questions? I talk very fast. I always get worried that like I've talked so fast nobody has understood a word I've said.
No, it was excellent. I mean, I feel like
Allison, you muted yourself by accident.
I did. It was excellent. And thank you. I feel like I learned so many amazing things every time I listened to you. And you answered some questions. And especially here in Allegheny County, we have a lot of these situations that you talked about happening. And we also have municipalities that are run really different, that are represented by the same people when you get statewide. So it really cleared up, I feel like, some of that gray area. So I appreciate it. And we also have a very rare occurrence in Allegheny County. We have someone running from the Labor Party for one of those two major seats in our at-large for our county commission, so, or county council. So we've got a whole bunch of fun things that you touched on. You answer, why is civic engagement so important for women, and particularly women of marginalized communities such as Jewish women? And excellent presentation. Yes, we will absolutely be sharing this with our members, Karen. I agree. And then I will wrap us up.
Amazing. So just real fast, I don't have all of the stats in front of me. But when I think about particularly women or other marginalized folks, right, the big stat that I know is that women represent 50% of the American population. And as Congress currently stands, we represent less than 25% of those seats.
Mhm.
There's that saying that if you're not at the table, you're what's for dinner. And it is so important to engage and to support women and to support folks who are running in other marginalized communities, right? We talk about the big ones, right? Race and religion, but also a big thing that sometimes gets missed is also ability or disability
Mhm.
status, right? Whether you how you became an immigrant in this country, right? There's so many voices at the table that are just not being heard, which is why at LEAD, we are just so focused on encouraging you to run. And we talk a lot about it in our trainings, just like, here are the realities of what it's going to be like to run for office. You are going to face these things. Here are the tools that we can help you with. Here's how we can build support systems around you. And really, if you are somebody, say you are a woman and you're like, I'm not really interested in running for office, I promise you there is women in your community who could use your support, whether that is donating, whether that is volunteering, whether that's being somebody who hands out the ballot that they are endorsed at the polling location, right? I always like to watch my words, but I really do believe that, like, I'm just going to say it. I think women are so unique in how we show up at the table, particularly for each other, far more than I've ever felt in any other capacity. And I think I've seen it here in Delaware County. We, in 2018, the wave of women, the blue wave of women, totally came here. in Delaware County. And it was because how many chairs we had here that were women, how many committee people were here were with women. And Dr. Kai, thank you so much for throwing this in these, but because I always forget about them. More bills are sponsored and passed when women are in office. Bills relating to women, children, family, healthcare, they become a higher priority. Businesses conducted in public as opposed to closed doors are also prioritized. And so, yeah, that was just, I love that question. I get so passionate about it that I get all jumbled in my brain about it sometimes.
Well, I love it and I love you for it. And I appreciate your time and your brain and your energy and for putting this together. And I just have a quick, short wrap up for us. Thank you, everybody, for being here. As we close tonight's conversation, I hope you're leaving with a clearer picture of how the gears of Pennsylvania's government turn and how critical it is that we, as engaged citizens, help guide that motion. From township supervisors to state senators, every office plays a role in shaping the freedoms, opportunities, and justice that touch our lives. The more we understand the function of these roles, the more effectively we can hold leaders accountable or step into those positions ourselves. For the Jewish community, civic participation is both a continuation of our heritage and an act of self-guarding of our future. We know from history that representation matters, that a seat at the table can be the difference between inclusion and marginalization. The work of the protecting democracy and the separation of church and state isn't abstract. It happens in zoning meetings, it happens in courtrooms, in legislative chambers, and it happens because people like you show up. And for women, particularly Jewish women, this is a moment to claim our space, to use our lived experiences, our empathy, and our strength to lead with both courage and conviction. Representation is not symbolic, it's transformative. So let tonight serve as both education and an invitation to all of you. Learn, engage, and lead. Because the future of Pennsylvania and the values that we want to reflect in it depend on informed, active citizens willing to do the work. And if it's not us, then who? Thank you all so much. This was such a great night. I'm such a political civics nerd. So thank you. It was great.
Thank you, Allison. This was amazing.
Thanks. And don't forget to take the survey. Thank you. Yes, survey. We need, and if you're willing to share a story about how tonight helped you or inspired you, we would love to hear from you too. We rely on grant money and it is grant season. So it's always helpful for us to be able to share with people why our work matters. So thank you, everyone. Good night. I think we're going to shut down. Thank you, ladies, so much. I'll follow up with you tomorrow. Thank